Welcome back to the Top Notch Documentaries YouTube channel. The search for the Currier's bodies was surely a tough one. Months spent digging through trash for any signs of remains wasn't going to be easy. Here is the full story. Hope you enjoy. Between May 7th and July 20th of 2012, major searches were conducted at the Coventry Landfill in Newport, Vermont. The FBI were focusing on a specific area of the landfill, specifically an area of trash placement from October the 26th till the following day of October the 27th of the previous year. It was a daunting task, as 7 months had passed since the demolition of the abandoned farmhouse, where Israel had confessed having left the Currier's bodies. Now demolished, the remnants of the farmhouse and its contents had then been transported to the landfill. Somehow, those who had demolished the farmhouse had not inspected the basement, where the smell of decomposition was overwhelming. The Curriers had been there for 4 months as their family and friends pondered the question, what had happened to Bill and Lorraine? But now there were some answers. A serial killer had drifted through town one night and brutally killed the couple. Families needed some form of closure, and in cases like these, remains are vital for that level of closure. However, the huge time span, amount of waste, and risk to human health were all going to prove to be a significant challenge. Still, investigators and searchers were attempting to remain optimistic.
So basically, because of the level of cooperation we have, there's still no connection. We're still able to convince them to keep it quiet.
No, that's good. Alrighty. So anyway, with that in mind, that's kind of what we're following up on now. I have no doubt that we're going to find the bodies because we've been very successful at narrowing it down to an area of the dump. And it's not tiny, but it's small enough to where we're going to be able to search it successfully. I have no doubt of that.
Along with law enforcement, surveying equipment and different specialists were brought in for extra help. These included 2 anthropologists, 1 anthropologist from the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History and 1 from the FBI. Both anthropologists helped to determine if bones discovered during the landfill search were human. There was only 1 rib bone that was found, along with bone fragments. These remains did not belong to Bill or Lorraine. Also present were workers from the Hazardous Materials Operations Unit, and they helped the search team develop a safety plan for moving through the landfill waste. Special gear was worn by the searchers to avoid any risk of disease and health risks. Unfortunately, Bill and Lorraine were never found despite the exhaustive efforts of everyone involved. Much time had been put toward finding the remains of Bill and Lorraine, but to no avail. In all, adding to the recovery of a bone and some fragments, hair mass was found, but this yielded no match to either Bill or Lorraine. And this next part is going to sound pretty insane if you ask me, but hear me out. Apparently, an American flag was recovered from the landfill on Flag Day. Flag Day is celebrated on June 14th and commemorates American pride. Emails were sent between different FBI agents discussing more than 1 discarded American flag, and there were requests for them to be properly destroyed, rather than sit under piles of trash in a landfill. Along with the American flags, a wallet with identification and cash was found, and that was returned to the owner. The discarded American flag found on Flag Day was intended to end up in the FBI Albany field office, and I assume that it eventually made its way there. The fact that this was even mentioned really illustrates just how everyone involved felt in the likelihood of the recovery of the Currier remains. It was not going to happen, and the flags and wallet just mentioned were completely unrelated to the Currier case, but I felt like the absurdity of it all was worth mentioning. And this video isn't to knock the search team or anyone involved. The bodies were presumably buried under heaps of waste. They were likely unrecoverable by the time that the first search was conducted, but law enforcement had to make the effort, and they certainly did just that. As the searches progressed over the coming months, back in Anchorage, Israel was still feeling amused by the whole situation. All of the searches, all of the efforts, all of the specialised equipment that had been brought to the landfill, everything had been for nothing. But Israel wouldn't be feeling amused for a whole lot longer. It was on July 18th that prosecutors in Vermont met with Bill and Lorraine's relatives. A media statement about the reason for the enormous search was going to be going ahead soon, as the landfill search was just days away from concluding. The search hadn't turned up any valuable evidence, and it was being shut down. Media had paid attention to the landfill activity, and the media aftermath was practically unavoidable, and Israel wasn't too happy with the attention. He didn't want to be charged in Vermont or even named as having ever been involved. More questions and more answers would be coming to light soon, connecting him to Vermont, and the media frenzy that comes with a suspected serial killer story tends to attract an audience. Israel could have kept quiet when it came to the murders, but he got carried away and gave away all of the details. He was informed about the media statement, his name having been put forth as having been responsible, and he was outraged. On July the 26th, in a video interview, he was spoken to about everything, as the FBI searched for potential resolutions to the problems that would now stem from the breach of their arrangement.
A little bored with it, so I mean, you're annoyed with that, with the way that was handled. Quite frankly, I'm annoyed with you because you had in your power a way to stop it right here. And I came up with this plan, and you could have done it. And if you did it, we wouldn't have had the problem in Vermont last week because we would have had the authority to say
they had already leaked my name to the press
but I mean, they
at
had
the time
nothing
that
else.
letter was out.
They had nothing else. And, they leaked it, but they had absolutely zero until they had the corroboration of the press conference, which, by virtue of this letter, we would have had more sway into telling them, no, you can't do that because he's cooperating, and here's what he's already done, and he's lived up to his end of the bargain. So that's the reality of the situation. You blame us for the situation. I'm blaming you.
I do blame you. I told you from the get-go, before I told you where the freaking bodies were left, I told you that I didn't want the locals involved, and the first thing you do is make a big scene and do a big freaking archaeological dig right alongside the main road.
Come on. You've agreed in the past, if we're being honest here, that we've handled that situation as quietly as possible. To whatever extent we could, we shut people's mouths, and the only problem was probably one cop that didn't get the message early on. And that was because...
No, I think you need to back up to your recordings.
Clearly, there was tension about the name leak, and the possibility of a forever damaged relationship was at an all-time high now. Israel had most of the information, despite his computer containing other victim names and unsolved crimes. Without him, the cases would never be solved.
I'm going to be charged with this federally. If they
I don't know, federally or state. They haven't.
But one or the other, soon, right?
Look, I've been holding them off, and I can ask them both to hold off a little bit longer, and that's their plan. They've said that in the press conference.
I'm just saying, originally, this was all this information on the Currier case was supposed to become part of the other information that I gave you prior to that.
Yeah.
And now it's all of a sudden become a separate thing, and now you want more information to add to this.
We're just trying to control, what happened at the very outset when we didn't know the full scope of things. Let's just deal with that problem. All right, maybe we can't, solve every single problem here, but we're happy to kind of try to solve Vermont. And I think it would be minimal impact to you if we convince them that, look, he just pleads guilty here, and then it gets wrapped up all globally in Alaska. That would be probably have the least impact on you. Agree?
Yeah, this whole thing is already a huge.
We're just trying to solve the
They never even found the bodies. At least if they had found the bodies, then it's just, there's no way around it now. You charge me with the Curriers. Everybody knows now, as soon as you charge me with that I gave you all the information you have, because you didn't find any on your own. Even after they knew they were at the landfill, they're like, oh, we didn't find them, but they were definitely murdered, and we definitely have the person who did it. And now, pretty soon, we're going to tell everybody who did it. And the person who did it is Israel Keys. So how did they know that? Well, you must have told them, so whatever.
How can we avoid?
You can't avoid it now. That's already happened. I mean, the majority of it's already happened. The only thing left is you to come out and say, yeah, Israel Keys is the one who's going to be charged for it. So,
And they didn't say that.
They didn't say it yet. I'm just saying, I'm going to be charged for it. You said soon, either federally in Vermont or in Vermont, and that's...
Okay, is there a way we can kind of at least keep the lid on things in Vermont any longer. I mean, and maybe, you know, I know you have another situation to work out, but give us something that buys us time.
How do I know how much time? First of all, I'm not buying any time because they already did a freaking news story on it. And you've already said they're chomping at the bit to charge me now, so...
This has been the video on the search for Bill and Lorraine Currier. As always, thank you for watching.